Welcome to Belly Up to the Blackboard, a podcast focused on the reality of teaching and other musings from and about professionals, hosted by Chris Munn and Justin Russell.
Well, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
How you doing there, bud?
Good. You know what? You got a good handle on this, Chris. That's the first time I've heard the music.
Oh, really?
The intro. Yeah, I usually don't ever hear it.
I bought a new cable to hook up to the phone, obviously, since you're not here right now. So we can talk, obviously. I was researching a couple things to see how it would go with Zoom. So I think I've got that figured out for next time, possibly.
Nice.
But
you know what they say. What we tell the kids too. The only way you get better at reading is to do what? Read. And yeah, that's the only way we get better at this. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I moved my setup from the garage so my wife could get the car in, so she doesn't get frost on her windows. So we're down.
Happy wife.
Back, happy wife, happy life. Down to the basement, in the booth. So I can just keep the setup here, which is nice. But yeah, so like you said, the more we learn, the better we get. And like I talked about before, when we ended last time about hey, like us, follow us, shoot us a message. If you could review us on whatever streaming channel you're listening to us. That'd be a great help. We love to see, how many people have downloaded the episode. I check it, probably too much. But yeah, hey, you know what? Including the United States, we've had downloads in 7 different countries. So that's pretty cool, just for screwing around and, just BS.
We won't be like Elon Musk and ask Twitter how many robots are actually out there. But no, I'm going to assume that those are all actual people in those countries.
Yeah, why not, right? I mean, here's my thing. If it was a bot, why would they download our episode, maybe? Or our podcast?
I think even robots probably have better things to do.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm not paying them unless you are.
Yeah, I don't have that money. I've been traveling.
Yeah, that's true. You're spending your money every day, stopping at new places. Yeah. So, all right, let's kick it off here with a little cork pop.
There it is.
All right, man. All right, so you're deep in the heart of Texas right now. What are you drinking while you're down there? Little mezcal, tequila, cervezas.
No. Dude, I think I said this a few podcasts ago. Just been as we travel through states. I pop into a liquor store too, just to see what the locals have, around, because Iowa, I mean, I don't know if those of you are listening know, but Iowa is kind of a narrow state when it comes to selection of different things. And so the one I'm drinking right now it's actually a High Coast. It's called Timmer Pete. It is a single still Irish whiskey.
Nice.
It is fabulous, man. It's got this like real smoky earthiness to it, and obviously that's from the peat. But no, I'm really liking this. I don't have to do the poor man's, old fashioned where I'm pouring, liquid smoke into it to try to balance that out.
Yeah, you haven't done that yet, have you? Because I know you talked about it before.
Liquid smoke is death when you drink it normal. Like, have you ever drank liquid smoke?
No, I don't use it.
I did it on a dare, I think, in my teens. I would highly recommend not to drink that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think you use it in recipes sometimes, but not for drinks, I guess. I mean, I don't, anyways. I don't know. Maybe somebody does. So you had that Lagavulin I had before, right?
Oh my gosh!
The Offerman edition. Is it as peaty as that?
Yes, I would put it on that level, but it's smoother.
Okay.
And it's because of that the copper still that they use. So no, I put it on that level, but it's it definitely is a good change from the last one I had was like from a sherry cask.
Yeah.
Or finished in a sherry cask, and so it had a little bit of a sweetness to it. I would say if you're a traditionalist Irish whiskey drinker or a traditionalist whiskey drinker, like definitely this is worth a try. So.
Well, nice. sounds good.
Good. What are you up to? What are you drinking, man?
So I went to Hy-Vee the other day, and I was just walking through and breezing through the aisles, and after I had to grab some other things, and I came across, honestly, it was a shooter of Soda Jerk. I've seen it on TikTok a bunch of different times. There's different flavors. So I grabbed one of the little bottles of the root beer flavor, and then the orange cream. And I didn't have any orange cream to mix with, so I did have root beer. So I just poured a little bit or that shooter into some root beer, and it's pretty good. I mean, it's sweet, obviously.
Nice.
But I wanted to try it since it's new to Iowa. I don't think they've had it here for a while. I mean, they just got it. So I couldn't tell you. I'd have to look at it, but the brand is Soda Jerk is what it's called. Oh. So I don't know. Did you see?
I just saw today. I don't know if you saw it. Dr. Pepper's coming out with a hard soda for a limited time.
Really?
Yeah. I can't remember. I just saw the headlines. I don't know the details, but yeah, I noticed that the other day. That'll be interesting because I think you've mentioned mixing some stuff with Dr. Pepper before, haven't you?
Yeah, I've mixed. I think it was Irish, which is like an Irish cream, but it's made from I think it's Cedar Ridge Distillery out east, and it's a pretty good. You mix it with that, it's almost like a cream soda with that Dr. Pepper. So it's really good. Doing that, so that'll be interesting. I know they have the Mountain Dew ones. The hard ones.
The Mountain Dew ones are pretty good.
Are they?
I was gonna tell you when I come back, you're gonna have to try. So the guys group, we're gonna have to try this TX whiskey.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's made in Texas, and from my understanding, it's only sold in Texas right now. It's like a small batch deal.
Okay, so it's very limited range then of where you can get it. Yeah, nice. Yeah, we'll be heading to Whiskey Fest in November on the 19th, so that'll be fun. You'll miss this year, but
I know, I'm so jealous. I mean, I've been there since it started. Remember?
Yeah, we've gone each year, so.
Yeah.
Well, when you end up moving back, you can start that tradition all over again.
I will definitely be one of those people camping out for tickets.
Yeah, and always got to make sure you get the extra pours.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hey, I know you're not involved with this now, but this week it was parent-teacher conferences. Yeah. So I think we'll talk a little bit about that today. We're talking before the show about what we've seen in parent-teacher conferences, and with us both being, special ed teachers, it's a little bit different because we don't see as many parents at parent-teacher conferences. Like I had mine Tuesday, I had 2 signed up, and 1 showed. So then, I'll have to make some phone calls and stuff, and we have our IEP meeting, so we're talking with parents most of the year anyways with updates and things like that. So it's it's not like we don't talk to them,
No, I was and that's what I was going to add, Chris, is for those of you who don't know much about the special education realm, I know it sounds like special ed teachers are always probably boasting or complaining about how much time they spend, communicating and talking to parents, and yeah, it could sound like a hyperbole, but it's honestly the God's truth. There's parents just like anyone else. We'll talk to once a day, right? Whether that's email, phone call, and then there's parents we'll talk to very consistently, at least once a week. So,
and then you have the flip side of parents that you try to get a hold of, and you just never can. You never get a response from them.
And conferences for special ed teachers is very indicative of that level of communication that we have ongoing anyways, right, Chris? Because a parent who shows up is most likely a parent we've talked to 10 times, 12 times before conferences already.
Yep, and we'll even see, I know we switched the way we do conferences now this year, and we're back in our rooms. Last few years we've all been in the gym and like just around the outside of the gym or the inside, but just on the edge. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'd see parents of kids that I have that they'd be there for conferences, and I don't know if it's because we talk enough or they just didn't want to talk to me, but you'd see them talking to other teachers and you're like waiting for them to stop over and never do. I used to talk to some more athletes' parents, kids I coach than some of my parents sometimes. But there's also more of them as well, So odds are.
So no, I think conferences are great. I see the value in them and the need to do them. Obviously, it's a great time of year, especially the fall. Wouldn't you agree, Chris? Like fall is probably the more positive or optimistic conference versus the spring one.
Yeah, I think when you get to, the fall, like you said, we're only a month or so in, so you'll see a little bit of quick growth. So you got that, like you said, that positivity. Kids are doing well. They're still staying up with what their grades and their classes and things like that, and you get more numbers too in the fall than you do in the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I would say as a new teacher, and I don't know about you, Bud, but I know as a new teacher, like I was so stressed and nervous to do conferences, like those first couple years. I don't know if it was one of those deals where like I was concerned that kids went home and told their parents, I have this teacher, Mr. Russell, that's an idiot, and I was probably proving it at conferences or
turning red, sweating.
Yeah, exactly. Or if it was just making sure that I had a good understanding or outline of what I was doing as part of my job. But I would say fall I was a lot nervous, and then in the spring it was so much more laid back because you're already into March by the time you have that conference.
Middle of March, I think. Yeah, is when we have.
Or end of February or something. Spring break's coming up. First semester is done. Like you got 18 weeks already out of the way, and you pretty much got a pretty good system going. And you got a good handle on kids. But what did you say? What did you say the hardest part about the fall conference was? Like you said, you're only 8 weeks in, 9 weeks in, and you have to give an assessment of somebody's kid that they've known for 15, 16, 17, 18 years.
Yeah, and you only know them for some if you have freshmen.
Yeah.
Or you have a transfer in, a new kid.
Yeah.
You only know them for those 8 or 9 weeks, so it's really hard to pinpoint exactly, what the kid needs. You've got their IEP and things like that, and if they're up from the middle school, you can talk to those teachers, and but it's hard to gauge. And like you said, you're basically like giving an assessment of this kid that you may have known for 8 weeks to even if it's 3 years, if they're a senior or whatever, and and the parent has known the kid for 18 years, 15, 14 to 18 years. So there is always that, like, you're telling them these things. And as a younger teacher, it's like you're waiting. I always felt like you're waiting for them to push back sometimes, like they disagree. And most of the time, it was the complete opposite. You're stressed out for no reason because parents see the same things you do most of the time. If nothing else, they're usually worse at home than they are for us at school.
Yeah.
I know I always, as a new teacher, and, we had computers, but I always printed all of the assessments off to go through it with parents. And as I've gotten older, and I don't know about wiser, but I just have it pulled up on my computer. I'm like, why print off 50 pages per kid or, whatever it is, 20 pages per kid, when I can just pull up on the computer and scroll through it,
Yeah. And most parents, and I don't know about you, Chris, but in my experience, most parents, as much as they do appreciate the paper copy, as soon as they hear, or as soon as they, and I do this as a parent sometimes too, as soon as I hear that my daughter is doing well or not doing well, like I hear and make that conclusion, like it doesn't matter what printed material I have in front of me. That's what's sticking with me, right? Like my kid needs to work on A, B, C, or my kid's doing really well and there's not much else that, I need to worry about. And I'm going to go, okay, well, here's these 50 pieces of paper that, I don't know if I need those, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, you go through the assessment, whether it's ISASP or MAP testing or any of that, and you go through it with them, and then it's like, okay, I understand what's going on. What do I do with the paper? What do I do with the paper? So, now it's really nice, especially being in our rooms, because I've got 2 monitors. I got my laptop, and then I have that monitor, so I can just actually turn that monitor to the parents, and we can scroll through, and I can talk about stuff. And if they have a question about something, it's easier for me to pull it up on PowerSchool or go through their credit audit than it is to flip through 30 pages and find it.
Well, I even think, like, now that I think about it, I think it's good. And if any of you who are in education and, work in the, legal side of things, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think printing things out could create like a confidentiality issue, right? Because pretty much all those printouts we used to do had all the students' information on it, right? Like, so if they lost it or, we're handing over this information. Like, I mean, there's students' test grades and historical records, sometimes names.
And it's only for that student ID number.
But yeah, but still, like, just having all those out, I don't know if I ever was anxious about having all the information sitting on my table during conferences when, hundreds of parents and families are coming through. But no, I think there's some definite benefit to just going over it with parents, and they're going to ask questions if they have them, and you can always email stuff to them or mail paper copies. But
and usually with our parents, if they have an issue or a concern, and maybe this is more, and I know that in the gen ed setting too, but we'll get an email before conferences are even close. They're contacting us pretty early. So
yeah, when I worked in larger school districts, I mean, there was one district I had 21 students on my roster, and I would say it still worked the same way, Chris. Like, I still received emails from specific parents. I still receive phone calls from specific parents or whatever, and so I think it's just, that's the way it is in any school district, right? Is you have those parents who, God bless them, they're on it, right?
Yeah, and those are usually the ones you see, those are the ones that stop in. But yeah, I've had, I know the last couple of years when we were co-teaching, and whether, I'm helping kids in the classroom and things like that, I wasn't the content expert. So me sitting at the table with the content expert, the math teacher, and it's almost like, just sitting there like waiting, or, maybe they'll ask you a question, but usually you're just kind of like that person on the side just waiting for the conference to be over, because they can explain everything better than you can, unless it's like one of my kids in my program that's I'm co-taught, because then I have a little bit more input on the student. But and I don't know about you, because I know you co-taught too. I don't know if you felt the same way, or but that was kind of me. I'm just kind of sitting there letting the math teacher talk, kind of nodding my head.
Well, the hard part is, like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the hard part, I always thought as a sped teacher, co-teaching and doing those co-conferences with the students, let's say it's a gen ed kid who's in like the top 10% of their class, right? And the parents asking questions about content specific things, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, my realm is on the like bottom 10% of the class, right? Like that's my expertise. Like, ask me how I'm going to get a kid to gain 3 years of math skills, right? Like, I can tell you that, I can game plan that, but to ask me how the kid who is, fifth in their class of 130 kids, how I'm going to make sure they're college ready, like, I can't answer that because I don't know the curriculum that well, right? Like, I'm not the content expert. Like, and I agree with you. It was an honor and it was a learning experience to sit there and listen. But in the same token, on the day-to-day stuff, the realm of sped, like, I have a finite amount of competence, I guess I could say, and brain capacity to keep that right. Like, for me to know the information that content expert was giving the parents on game planning stuff, like, on the next day, I'm not using that, right?
Yeah, no, it's, if you need me to write an IEP, I can help you out here.
I could crank that sucker out like nothing. But
no kidding. Yeah. If you want to talk about a transition survey, I got you. Don't ask me about the FAFSA. I don't remember. It's been
No, don't ask me. If they, your kid wants to be an engineer and work for the state of, Texas, like how they're gonna do that, because I don't know content like curriculum mapping on that. Like,
no. Yeah.
But in any case, I think it's good. And I was gonna ask you, what were your honest thoughts about student-led conferences versus kind of like, teacher-led?
I like the way you did it, because you did that last year, and I think it works really well if the student, like if you've practiced it and prepped it, and you did that, not like you weren't coaching them what to say, but you were telling them, hey, this is what it's going to look like. These are the questions we're going to go through. These are the things that you're going to show your parents. And I think that's how you do it, if I remember right. And then they just took charge.
Yeah, because we scaffolded it. So, 2 or 3 weeks before conferences, I made sure they had kind of a graphic organizer, like you said. And you know what? Like it was scripted questions, you're right, but the responses were all there. So regardless if, as we're practicing and they're writing things down, because let's be honest, like, and I think you can agree with me on this one, Chris, like I was a completely different kid when I was sitting by myself compared to next to my parents, right?
Yeah. I mean, you, well, and we're all the same way. It's like,
yeah.
You're going to own up to it when your parents are there, because you're going to get called out for anything. So it's not like you're going to, when you've got the student, the parent, and the teacher, that kid can't BS it, because either the student or the parent will call them out on it if it's something they know, or the teacher's going to call them out on it. So, but no, I think you did really well on those last year. And I think they're good, because then there's more, we talk about that student ownership piece of it. And I think that is really well. And that's something I haven't done yet. And for me,
but it takes a lot of work. I mean,
it does.
You're super busy. I mean, you basically inherited both math programs, that we were doing. And, I mean, there were some transitions. I do have to laugh and like, when I think about how much kids started to blow off the idea that they had to write down their conference responses, until I said, look, I know some of you are thinking my parents aren't coming to conferences. Like, they've already told me that. I said, but here's the problem is you can write down IDK or WTF on that response sheet, but I'm mailing home a copy of all these. So like, if your parents aren't coming, great, whatever. I'm going to put my assessment of your skills attached to your responses to these questions or prompts, and your parents get to read them regardless. And what was hilarious was about 3 days after conferences, a couple of the kids, like, they came in and like separately, but they started to chew me out. Like, they're like, Mr. Russell, like you didn't tell us you were. I go, I told you multiple times. I said, why? What happened? And like, both of them, I guess they got like reamed by their parents, because they screwed around on the responses.
Well, that's good. I mean, you told them, they just didn't listen.
No.
Yeah. Or thought you weren't serious.
Yeah, I thought I wasn't serious. And it was so funny because, like I said, I mailed home. I had this tracking sheet of the skills and how the kid was doing. And so I mailed that home. And so when the kids' answers to like, how do I think I was doing on skill 7A or whatever, and they put a 4 out of 4, right? Obviously, and they put because I know how to do it or whatever. And then they look at the actual skill assessment score, and then my comment next to it, and they're like, and the parent's obviously going to know their kid's not telling the truth at that point, right? Because there's this evidence that's contrary. So no, I think it just takes some time to get there, and the typical parent-teacher conference, though, like, what would you say? Like, would you say a student-led conference in the past would be sufficient, or do you feel like something more robust is kind of needed?
No, I like the idea of a student-led conference. I wonder how it would go in like a gen ed setting, because I think it does take time. So unless you do like the last 5 minutes of a class for the week, maybe up to conferences of going through maybe one question a day and having 5 questions possibly, I think it's beneficial because, again, there is that student ownership of it, and they have to explain their thinking and not just sit passively while the teacher talks to, the parent, and they don't really say anything until the parent gets mad and they're like, wants them to explain it,
Yep. Yeah. And I think I stole part of the idea from you on the portfolio piece, because I know you have a binder with your students on, and that's something I always like scoffed at, just because I'm like, oh, that's so much time. Like I gotta get binders and I gotta get them to order. Like, no, I love that idea though in hindsight, because when I started doing that and I started collecting the kids' work, had them put it in a folder, that really helped, because when it came to those conference time sheets, the students had all the work with it, right? And if there were like standards they didn't have any work done for yet, there was no hiding it, right? They couldn't go on there and say, well, I'm going to tell my parents I'm a 4 on this skill. Well, what evidence do you have?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't done it yet, right? Like, well, then okay, you can tell them you're a 4, but you're the one who's going to have to tell them you have no evidence for it.
Yeah, you're an NE, no evidence.
Yeah, and yeah, and it's if the excuse is, well, my parents are going to believe me over the teacher, well, that's fine. I mean, you can tell them I lost it, but what are you going to tell them when they talk to the other parents and there's 15 other sets of parents who have evidence, right? Like, I didn't just lose yours. No, I like that idea of a mini portfolio, or I don't know what the new I think it's micro something, like micro testing they now say, or whatever it's
Maybe.
called.
The nice thing is it just keeps everything organized, and
you
can say, hey, where's it at? If they can't find them, like, well, this is exactly where I told you to put it, and so we can show your parents.
Awesome too, like, it's awesome too, like if you have to miss for some reason, like as a teacher, that was awesome. Those days I subbed for you, man, like it was so easy just to go, okay, grab the cart, right? Your tote's over there that has all the binders. It made subbing for you so much easier, just knowing that each kid had their own programming, own binder, mapped out. But yeah, that was cool to be able to show parents that too, right?
Yep. Oh yeah, yeah. And then like you said, it's a little more descriptive than just telling them. They can see what their kid has done, and like what we did with our skills classes, and created those skills matrices matrices for the kids. And then even if a kid passed through a stage and they went to the next stage, they could show the parent, well, here's where I started. I was able to get through all of this and get it done, and I scored well, so then I moved on. And that's just a good thing to show. It's not just like I gotcha, and I kind of hate using that term because
I do too.
But yeah, so they can show the positive of it, not just the negative of not doing something. But yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever have any?
What do your kids do?
Oh, go ahead.
What do your kids do? Do they do student led?
My kids, my own kids.
Yeah, your kids.
No. The teacher goes through it.
Oh, do they?
They're there. Like, we bring our kids to conferences.
Well, obviously, yeah.
And they're young enough, like they don't stay home. But there's a lot of kids that don't go to conferences, and I'll say it now, and who knows what'll happen in 3 years, but. I plan on having my kids go to the conferences because, they should be able to hear what the teachers are saying to the parents too. Yeah. And if, I don't think I'll have any issues with my own children, discipline wise or, but it's always good to have them there because then you can ask them, and then, if they try to lie to you, the teacher's right there. But
no, I agree. Your kids, I think the biggest thing is, your kids feeling challenged. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's the issue you're going to have, Bud, is they're quick as a whip, man. They're sharp. They catch on things pretty quick, and I think that's the biggest thing is just they're gonna need to find something that challenges them.
Yeah, I hope that's the only issue we have. Um, with conferences, so and I asked you this question earlier before we got on air, but so you've never had any like strange or like weird conferences?
No, man. Like, you know, I've had those conferences where the parents break down and cry in front of their kid. I've had those conferences where the kid is just cursing out, screaming, yelling at the parent, calling them everything under the sun. And you know, those ones are hard to watch because you want to support the parent because you know they're struggling, but at the same token, it's kind of a hard spot to be in. I've had those ones where the parent is just verbally railing on the kid, and I've had to step in that one. But no, I've never had like a parent tell me off or a parent physically threaten me. I don't think I can't remember a situation where those. I know I've been like intimidated by some parents where I know like I can't make a mistake in this meeting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and you don't mean physically. You just mean like
no,
because they cross every T and dot every I and
that, and they know their shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this is not their first rodeo, especially once they get to high school. And so the fact of the matter is like literally I better make sure all my I's and T's are crossed, right? Like, cause, any small mistake, and it's not even like, they come to get you. It's I almost would feel like it is a credibility issue. Here's like, especially in the fall, right? After 8 weeks, I've had their kid for 8 weeks. They're expecting something, different than middle school has been because at the high school level, that's where we are. And I know that I better make sure that I have a response to every question, that I'm not fake. And then I have to make sure that if I don't know, like I'm telling them that, but I'm writing it down and saying, look, before you leave the conferences tonight, I will have an answer for you. You know what I mean? Like, those are the parents that really challenged me, but I feel like made me a better teacher. Correct?
Yeah, because you knew you had to get your shit together and make sure that you had answers, and not just like you didn't just BS them. You made sure that you knew, or like you said, if you didn't know, you made sure you were able to find that answer and let them know.
Right.
I've had a couple parents at conferences when their kid was struggling, and when I was teaching a math, teaching a class, and their kid's struggling, and they did so well with the teacher before me, and they're like, I don't know, they just really liked him better. I understand that, I get that, and they've told me in class they like this teacher better than me, and
yep.
And you're the same way as I am. Is that it's kind of not as prevalent in education, it seems like nowadays, but we're more on the side of we have high expectations. It doesn't matter what your test scores are. We have high expectations for what you're going to do, because outside of high school, when you graduate, you're not going to have me there. So I'm not going to sugarcoat things and make things easy for you. I'm going to be on the opposite of it's going to be difficult. Yes, but I'm not going to not support you, but I'm not going to make it very easy just for the fact to make you feel better, right? We want you to be ready to get out of high school. And sometimes that doesn't look like the way parents want it to look or the kid wants it to look, but in the long run, I think most of them understand that.
Oh, absolutely. And I think in my experience, or I should say I know in my experience, that is so true that parents, majority of the time, support the idea that myself as an educator is there to push their student and challenge them, right? Like, every year, like I start my classes with, look, I'm going to admit that I'm probably not going to do everything correctly and I'm going to make mistakes, But the biggest thing is don't listen to how I'm saying something, but listen to what I'm saying, right? Like, so those moments are the ones that really matter, right?
Yeah, and I think part of it too is communication needs to be very clear. Because I had a miscommunication with a parent recently, and they came into the meeting and they were mad and they were upset. Well, after we went through the meeting and I explained like what the whole deal was, and it was with like scheduling a class that needed to be taken before another class, and for some reason, because you always have scheduling issues at the beginning of the year, they were scheduled in this advanced class, or the class they weren't ready for yet, and I took them out of it to put them in a lower level class they hadn't taken yet, and they were confused, didn't know why. Obviously, student was upset because they liked the other class,
right?
But after we have our meeting and we explain it, then they understand. So communication is a huge key. Be very clear with your communication. And I know we said this about students before, of them being able to read BS. Parents are just as good too. So, and it serves no purpose, or it does not help you, to try to BS a parent in something, because it would always come back to you. And like you talked about before, if I don't know it, let me get the answer. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure. I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. Let me check with this person. I'll get back to you. And I did that with a conference Tuesday about an internship. And I didn't know like exactly what the requirements were. Did they have to be 18? So I said, hey, let me get a hold of our guidance counselor. I'll make a note. And I talked to her that night later, and then I shot him an email that night,
Yeah. Yep. No, and that's, and for right, wrong, or indifferent, whatever it was, like my last couple of years of teaching, it seemed to click with myself and students, especially when they start to gripe and get upset, or they'd say, Mr. Russell, you're kind of a hard ass, or, Russell, like, why are you burning that kid? Or why are you always, hating on me? And here's the thing, like, it's a generational thing, I understand, but it finally clicked to me when I started asking kids this, and it's very simple. It's, would you rather me lie to you so you feel good, right? Like, you've had people lie to you all your life about how you're doing in school, about how life is going to be, about how easy things should be, yada, yada. Would you rather me lie to you so you feel good about yourself? Because I could do that all day long. Look, you did great on that test, even though you got a 40% on it. Hey, that's not going to matter, because in real life, you know what? You can fail, and things are going to happen. Like, I can lie to you all day long. Or do you want me to be honest with you so you can get better and make things happen? At first, kids did not respond well to that, and for good reason, right?
Well, they want the easy way out a lot of times. They want the least difficult path.
Yep. But when they come up to me for the 5th time and they go, I think I got this right. And I go, you have one small mistake in this area. Look back at, skill 4A. I think that's really going to help you. They started to understand that, like you just said, there's a standard, right? Like, it's not, here, let me build this bridge. Even though it's incorrect, we're going to leave it. It is, no, it costs $40 billion to tear down. We're going to tear this sucker down because it's be done right, right? It was awesome to see kids and the wheels start to turn. Because even though I hated it, and I think you know who I'm talking about, we had a student or a couple of students who literally would ask us, what's the like bare minimum I have to do, right?
Yeah. What do I have to do just to pass?
Right. And, in hindsight, I hated that question, but in hindsight, it makes sense. Like, the wheels were turning in those students' heads. Like, okay, Mr. Russell has the standard. Mr. Munn has a standard. I know they're not going to accept anything lower, but there has to be a bare minimum, right? Like, they'll accept.
Yeah. What's the floor on this?
And I kind of like that now that I think about it, because, in their own way, they were thinking through how to get to where they needed to be or wanted to be. but yet still be them.
Yeah, with the least amount of effort, but still just enough to pass.
Yes. And you know what? Those students, in their own way, will be successful. My level of success for them or benchmark, it probably or may not be met, but I think you can agree, and I think everyone out there can agree who's listening, is that we've come to a point in society where it's acceptable to say that a level of success or my level of success is different than Chris Munn's level of success and somebody else's level of success. And so good for them, I think. Yeah.
Well, I think everybody else, like you said, everybody has their own level of success, but you can't be mad at somebody else who's more successful because they have a higher ceiling or goal. And
floor. They have a higher floor than you. Yeah.
Exactly. And I've told the kid too, and I've said it this year and I've said it in the past, I'm going to push you, right? I expect big things from you. If I didn't think you could do it, I wouldn't be challenging you to I wouldn't be pushing you. I'm pushing you because I believe you can do it. That's the same thing when we were coaches,
Absolutely.
And I said, if I'm not pushing you or not expecting something out of you, that's when you should worry, because then I don't feel like you're capable of it and I've given up.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. Did you ever, as you think about the last several years of teaching, did you evolve then in how you did parent-teacher conferences? I mean, did you go from that, I'm going to be fluffy and kind of rainbows and sunshine and kind of really try to get through these couple nights of conferences, make sure parents feel good about their kid, to like still making sure that parents felt good about their kid and having a game plan, but being more realistic? Or do you feel like you've always kind of been one way?
That's a good question. For the most part, I've been pretty brutally honest. I mean, I will point out the positives, but if there's a kid that's, hey, he's going to be a senior and he is behind 8 credits, I'm not going to flowery and, be like, oh, it'll be fine. We'll figure it out, blah, blah, blah. I'll say it can be done, but he's going to have to bust his ass and not screw around like he has for the last 3 years. And I think most parents that I've had anyways, you build a good enough relationship with parents, that, I mean a relationship of trust, that and they know most of the time if their kid's struggling because they're screwing around. And that's usually, I mean, let's be honest, nowadays, if a kid is in class doing what they're asked to do, odds are they're probably going to pass the class, right?
Yeah.
So most of the parents where I've got a kid that's behind and things like that, they know that they've been behind because that's how the kid has been his whole life. But now I would say, especially back to the high school, I'm more honest, brutal. I don't want to say honest, brutally honest. You don't, fluff it like you would with like when we were probably at middle school conferences where you didn't want to hurt the kid's feelings as much. But when they're a high school kid and they're getting close to being done, I mean, point out the positive, obviously, because not every kid is 100%, there's no positives. But I think there's more of a brutal honesty of real world is coming quick. Yes. And you're either, hey, you're ready, you're on track, you're ahead, let's plan on taking some DMAT classes, things like that. Or, you know what, you're going to have to change something because what you're doing now is not working.
Yeah. And, I would agree to that. It makes me remember like our former administrator that we worked for, he said it right. Like the conferences should not be the first time that a parent hears bad news, right? Or hears how their student is doing. Even at first conferences, right? Like after 8 weeks, a parent should have some type of update or understanding, regardless if they're responding to your communication or not, right? Like,
I mean, even if it is you're updating you've got your grades updated and they can see where their kid is at before, they should not be shocked when they come to conferences. Now,
No.
usually if it's a negative grade, I know that administrator always wanted us to email out parents if they were going to fail or had a D. So it isn't a surprise. But a lot of times if parents saw stuff on Power School,
Yeah.
they would email with a question.
Yeah.
Email
or send the kid in with, the kid got yelled at or talked to the night before, and they're like, can you call my, grandma or mom and dad or whoever to let them know, like, I talked to. And those are the fun conversations, because you're like, what lesson did we learn here, right? Like, as you talk to that student. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I was actually the opposite, man. Like, I evolved. I came into the teaching world with kind of the pulpit message of 5 to 1, right? Like, so 5 compliments for every 1 critique or negative comment. And so I always went into conferences with this kind of attitude, like, okay, I got to make sure this parent and this kid, like, they leave happy. Like, it's almost a politician talk, right? Like, there's no substance to what I'm telling these people. Like, I'm not giving a game plan for their student. My whole purpose was to make sure the parent and the kid left happy. Like, your kid's failing math and they need a different math goal, and we've talked about that, but they're doing all right. There's no red flags. Like, hey, no, your kid's gonna do well. They're gonna get into high school. They're gonna have the skills. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't feel like I ever got in those meetings and was negative. Like,
well, and that's part of it. I think, as a young teacher, you're face to face with parents for maybe the first or second time, and you don't want to. It's easier to break bad news over an email, right? Or like be more honest. And like, if you give them bad news or you tell them, something that they may not want to hear, whether it's the truth or, even though it is the truth, you don't know how they're going to react.
No,
so I could see that being almost the default, especially like I said, as a young teacher, and not sure of yourself, possibly, you kind of wonder, like you're saying, you wanted to make sure you crossed all your T's and dotted your I's, and you were just very nervous. I could I could totally see that. I was probably the same way too. Yeah. It's been a while, but I'm sure I was probably similar.
No, but I would say though, like, I would say you've been more like constant, right? Like, because you've really worked mainly with high school students and parents, and I would say you've been always very good about, like, you're not an asshole with parents. You're not saying like your kid is a dumb shit who's not going to make, you're not that guidance counselor that everyone talks about, at their, like Bill Gates as he's given his college commensuration speech or whatever it is, and commencement speech, and talking about how, like, the guidance counselor told him, he'd grow up to be, you're not that guy. But in the same token, I think you've always been genuine, and that's why you've been so successful with parents. Is even with those parents who come in guns a-blazing, as soon as they know you're not wish-washy, I mean, you're not confrontational or standoffish, but they know as soon as they start firing away that you're not backing off because you're genuine and you're consistent. Like, we know those tones of those conversations change. I think what really happened was when I went to Colorado to teach, I can remember vividly, like, my whole persona and thought about conferences changed. There was no faking it. Like, a parent who came in and I had already talked to him about 15 times in the last 6 weeks about their student. Like, there was no saying, like, oh, it's rainbows and sunshine, like, your student's great. I love them. They're going to do what, like, there was none of that. It was, hey, I just talked to you about 2 hours ago. I know, I appreciate you coming in for the parent teacher conferences. Like, is there any questions really? Because we already know how your student's doing. like what questions do you have about the game plan? Is there anything that you thought about in the last couple hours? Like that was literally most of the conversations I had with parents at teacher conferences, right? Or I apologize. I had to call you today. I know you had to come pick up your student. Like, I know there's some things that need to be worked out. Let's talk about it and figure out how to change. Like, that was so when I got back to Sadell, I feel like those conferences were so much more high quality, right? Because I could be genuine without the fear of, oh crap, if I say something wrong, I'm gonna get fired or written up. Right.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I'm wrong, but knowing you for as long as I have, you care about the student. So, that you're being honest, and sometimes, you got to be brutally honest, but it's because you care about how the kid does.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah, it comes back to that message about how is the real world going to be? Like, if that student gets into their first evaluation meeting with their boss, and regardless if they're working at Dollar Tree or they're working at a Fortune 500, they're going to have an evaluation meeting of some kind, right? Or the moment they go and ask for a raise, like their boss has to evaluate them on like, okay, they're not going to be nice. They're going to be brutally honest. Like, you've been late for the last 3 months, right? Every day. And you want a raise? Like, I don't know how to tell you differently, right? Like, no.
Well, and that's how, like, they need to be able to be prepared for blunt conversations like that, and
yes,
how to respond. And that's where sometimes you're blunt with the kid and you're brutally honest, and they get mad about it. It's like, well, I understand you're mad, but is this not true? Is this not true?
Yeah.
Is this not true? If it's not, okay, let's talk about that, because from where I'm sitting, this is what I'm seeing. You know? And then if they can get used to that in high school, it better prepares them for life. Now, it's not, hugs and unicorns and all that stuff, but it's what a kid needs. Whether they're a special ed kid, a gen ed kid, ELP kid, whatever, whatever it may be, they need to be prepared to have honest conversations and somebody to be truthful with them.
Right. And truthful. And I also think, especially, and correct me if I'm wrong on this too, but in your experiences, but in today's societal norms, I don't think there is a societal norm on how someone responds, right? And so they have to be prepared. Like, if they're going to come in and try to gunsling with a stranger, somebody they'd never met, they have no idea how they're going to respond, and they try to be fake, or they try to lie, or they try to cheat their way into a situation that's beneficial for themselves, like, they have to be prepared on how someone's going to respond. And I think, I know the whole world isn't negative, and trust me, traveling around right now, I have so many positives about humankind, but I do believe there is an understanding that you don't know what happens nowadays if you flip somebody off when you're driving, right? Like,
you don't know how they're going to react.
No, I mean, it could be anything from that person just waving to you, clear to following you to your house, and but that's what I'm saying is like, there has to be some understanding about causality, and I think actions speak louder than words, and that message is definitely getting lost. And I know we're starting to ramble here a little bit, but conferences definitely are a good breeding ground for students to really learn what it means not only to self-evaluate, but then also to understand the actions they've done for the last 8 to 9 weeks has consequences, whether positive or negative.
Yeah. And for the older kids too. Sorry to cut you off.
Yes.
For
you're fine.
Your juniors and seniors, what you've done for the last 2 to 3 years also has consequences. Whether that they're positive to where, hey, I busted my butt, passed every class, I'm ahead of the game, I can take classes at DMAC or do internships instead of sitting and repeating a class, or screwed around, didn't show up to school for the first 1 to 2 years, and now you're behind credits. You have a full schedule. They're all required classes, and if you don't pass one, you don't graduate.
Yep. And so with that, I think now is a good breaking point to probably read some of those comments, because I know some of you out there are probably getting tired of us rambling a little bit. But no, I think, though, Chris, just summing that up, conferences are a great way to not only interact in an honest and pure way with parents, but also to help develop student skills in hearing critique, hearing positive and compliments, because you and I both know from experience, kids have a hard time accepting compliments. I mean, just watch them. They get shy, shoulder shrug, avoid eye contact, their feet turn away. Like they're not used to it. And then also game planning, right? Like you've heard the negative, you've heard the consequence of your behavior, you've heard the consequences of lacking these skills. Now develop a plan with us, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, go into some of those crazy comments.
So before I do that, I will say, since I asked you, but you were rude and didn't ask me if I ever had any weird conference early in my career. I had a mom tell me that if I need to hit her kid, I could. I'm like, well,
I don't think that's odd. We've heard that many times, because some of the parents we have for the students we have are people we went to school with.
This was not, though. But yes, I know what you're saying. Like
okay.
people, you know.
So that would be a little more awkward, yeah.
And that might have been in my second or third year teaching. And I'm like, well, I appreciate it, but I think that's frowned upon.
I have to check my teacher handbook, but I'm pretty sure the district says no.
Let me make sure I check my contract to make sure I don't get fired. You know.
I think I get one a year. I don't want to waste it on your kid.
Yeah, not this early. It might have been fall conferences. Yeah, so you found this earlier because, you know, we've had pretty good relationships with our parents and our students. So we really haven't had crazy conference stories. So Justin found this because he's got all the time in the world. This is actually from a website called scarymommy.com. And it's just teachers share threats, insane requests, and absurd accusations from parents. So I'm going to read a couple. Do you have this pulled up too?
Yeah.
I was going to read a couple of my favorite.
Okay.
And then I'll let you pick out a couple. One of the first ones was, I had a parent tell me this kid was acting dumb for my benefit, and he's really smart at home. I don't know how that works, where a kid's going to switch it off there. Yeah. You got one in the holster ready that you saw?
Yeah, this is on the subject of homework. Kaylin doesn't feel like writing. She'll just say the answers to the work out loud from now on. I hear that a lot, but here's the thing. Like, I hear that a lot from kids. Like, I don't want to write. And it's like, okay, do you see a matrix or a 4-point scale anywhere that is assessing writing? Like, no, I just want you to write crap down. Like, what are your thoughts? Like, I don't care. Like, just write it down. Like, and it's so funny, right? Like,
well, nowadays this would be fine, because now we just ask kids to prove that they understand the content, whether it's, you know, in a writing sample or they respond orally.
Yeah. So it's an option. But anyhow, yeah, I just found that funny. No, there's so many kids. And even parents. Like, I've noticed that too. Like, there's a lot of parents who don't want to do emails because they don't want to write. Like, they'll just tell me that. Like, can I just call you? Or how about I text you? And I'm thinking, well, isn't texting the same as typing? Well, whatever. Like, I guess, yeah. Too funny.
Here's one that I did like. Okay, so I'm gonna go with homework. Now I found a couple others, so I'll do this one first. But it says, my child has anxiety and as such will not be completing your final project. You will give her an A for the course regardless of her ability to complete the research project, or I will report you to the administration and sue the school.
Suing the school is a big one.
That's the first threat.
Yeah, it is. It's a big threat. I think there's some merit in it, because I know, you know, obviously districts don't want to get sued, but yeah, that one's a funny one. I got one for behavior, and this will touch on quite a few things I think you and I have experienced, but Yes, my child is misbehaving, throwing chairs, hitting other kids, etc. But you took his paper airplane in second grade and scrunched it up. So this is really your own doing. Um, you know what? Like, I don't know about you, Chris, but I've heard this occasionally from teachers. Like, they were doing fine until you came in, and I'm thinking, you called me.
Yeah.
Like, you called me as the teacher to come and help. Like, what do you mean they were doing fine? Like, yeah, I've heard that a few times. And even parents like, well, they said that what triggered them was that you came in to get them. I said, and it was like, sometimes it's like, I was coming in to observe other students. Like, I wasn't coming in to observe your kid. Well, they thought you came in to watch them. And so they freaked out. Like, I don't know how that correlates, because here's the sheet. Like, I literally came in to evaluate other students. Like,
yeah. Although I will say though that they were fine until you got in there. There are some, and this is in the past, nobody right now, but like in the past, we've had associates with students that like it always seemed like they would just push the buttons of the kids.
Yeah.
And when the associates are gone, the kids are fine. But when the associates are there, it's just not a good fit.
With mayhem, yep.
One thing I see in that same section that I don't know if we've heard from parents, but it always seems like from a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, some parents. When talking to a parent regarding behavioral issues, the parent said, from 8 to 2, he's your problem, not mine.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's I'm assuming that is probably from a very frustrated parent that has to deal with the same crap at home.
Yes. Yep. I like the one you brought up earlier about they like the last teacher so much better. They never had issues. That one's an interesting one to me too. Or the last teacher was so much easier.
Yeah, well, it's a lot easier when they give you the answers. When I make you think on your own. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Hold on a second. That doesn't happen.
Well, even with that one, like they said last year was easier. Like I had to sometimes remind parents, like last year though, like it was middle school. So really, grades mattered. But like you said before, grades mattered, but unless they were like really, really, really bad or like expelled, like we really don't do retention of students. Like nobody in education holds kids back really anymore, right?
No,
like
until you get to the high school, and then credits are, right? You have to have credits. No, I got
that's
to
a hard conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would tell that. I know, like when I moved back up to the high school, from the middle school, and I told kids there because I had already previously been at the high school. Took a sabbatical to work at a shelter for a year and then came back to where I'm at now. But at the middle school, I would tell 7th and 8th graders, I get it. You don't get a credit for this. You don't get a credit for this class. So you don't want to, you don't want to do the work. You're going to move on to the next grade anyway. But
right.
You need to create good habits now because it's going to, it'll affect you in high school. And then after 2 years, I moved to the high school again. And then I had some of the same kids, and then all of a sudden they failed a class or two. And I said, I told you this last year. And, the girls that we had, some of our, I don't want to say favorite students, but students we really liked last year that graduated, said, I told you 6 years ago that you need to get your stuff done. Otherwise it is going to be an issue. And you didn't listen to me, but who was right? And, they finally admitted.
But I don't want to say like, I told you so, but.
Oh, I said I told you so. But with the kids saying that they missed the teacher from last year, after a while, because I heard it multiple times, I'm like, yeah, me too. I miss him too. My last one before we start finding out where you're at right now. I kind of said it earlier, but this is under the title of Just Plain Ridiculous. I was told last year that the obvious reason I work in special education is because I can't get a job teaching normal children. So that's what the parent told the special ed teacher.
Isn't that hilarious?
Oh my gosh.
Normal, whatever. So, along with that is like when a parent like insults their kid because they're in special education, and then like the fact that you have to correct them on that idea, like just because they're in special education doesn't mean like they're abnormal. Like they're behind in certain skills.
Yes.
That one's kind of an awkward one too. Yes.
Yeah, especially when it's their parent.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Their parent.
We don't want to talk about how genetics work, but
no.
Okay, moving on now.
Yep.
Unless you had another one.
No, I was just gonna say the one that always I struggled with was when a student went home and disseminated information that they made up or they misconstrued. You know, whether it was a conversation with the student or whether it was just kind of in plain time, during class. But like those are always the hard one too, because it's such a fine line, right? Like it's a he said, or he said, she said battle, right? Like you can't. The hard part is, and that's where pushing your ego aside, correct, is you just, whether you said it or not, you just kind of, you admit to it, correct? You just tell the parent, yep, that's my bad. I'll just move on. Because you're not going to say anything to sway the parent at that point.
Well, no, and they're usually mad at like, they must have misunderstood what I was trying to ask them to do or what they said. And then you explain what your intention was.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that helps. It's nice in email just for the fact that you have a paper trail. But the problem with email is that, you lose the inflection, right? You lose, some of that.
Well, things get lost in translation.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
But sorry to add on.
No, you're good. And before we do find out where you're at, so what's some advice for new teachers as they're going through parent-teacher conferences this fall?
I would just say the big thing, like you had mentioned, first of all, just be real. Like Weed said, Coach Weed said last week, like I hate using that term, but I think you do. I think you can't be fake, and like you've brought on, like you have to know when you can be brutally honest. You have to know when you can be honest with a gentle touch, and you have to know when you can be honest, but you're going to have to do it with like a big dose of candy and sugar and all that fun stuff, right? Like, and that's part of just knowing your parents. For you gen ed teachers out there who have 100, 200, 300 students that you have to get through, I know it seems impossible to get to know your parents, but the biggest piece of advice I could give, if you're going to take one, is start prioritizing who those quote unquote high maintenance parents are. The ones you know that regardless of how their kid is doing, you have to make contact at least once a week. Like set a reminder, write on a calendar, do sticky notes, whatever you have to. Just make sure because that will reduce your load a lot by just knowing what parents you're going to, and some of that is just having conversations with the grade below you or another teacher or whatever you're going to do. But and I would say the second piece of advice for new teachers about conferences is don't put too much on it. Like if you know where a student is and a parent is giving pushback about it, like, oh, last year they were at the top of their class, or, my student is a AAA student, they're going to go on to Harvard, and that's a little bit different. Like, again, know how you can give a light touch on that, but don't back down and fluff things up, because the worst thing you could do is say, you're right, your kid's going to go to Harvard. 4 years later, they apply to Harvard, and Harvard goes, well, you don't have these skills. Like, who said you had these math skills? And that's going to be heartbreaking, not just for the parent and the student, but for you, because they had no indication before that point that wasn't the case, right?
Yeah. What's the saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of, what is it, medicine? I can't remember what it is. But basically,
I think you're making that up.
Yeah, no, it's something. I've heard it. I can't remember what it is. So.
Ask Liz tomorrow. She knows.
Yeah, I'll ask her. She's smart. But no, it's, if you're honest with them now, or if you're just honest with them, you don't have to remember what you said, right? Is that, that's one of the sayings is, you don't have to remember what you said because you're honest. And like you said, you get to know your parents as you get a couple years in, you got the same kids. But yeah, just clear communication with parents. And it's good with those students there too, because they both hear it at the same time. Yeah, and like you said, it's try not to be nervous. It's hard because this may be the first face-to-face you have with that parent. And I like what you did say is that know who those high-flying, high-maintenance parents are. And the more you can communicate, the better. I don't know if I've ever heard a parent say, I get too many emails from this teacher. And maybe they do, but like you would rather have a parent say that than say, well, I had no clue my son was failing or daughter was failing. Right.
Well, and the crazy thing about all that is most of the parents who you make sure you respond to every time, they will at some point in that school year, in the 180 days you have them, they will themselves admit to being high maintenance. Like it is uncanny if you ensure that those parents are kind of at the top of your list and ensure that you always within 24 hours respond to them, you always have a response or the ability to respond, they at some point in your relationship with them will admit that they're high maintenance. Like, because they understand that as soon as the 500th time they've called you or emailed you and you're responding, it will start to dawn on them like, oh shit, like I'm taking up a ton of this teacher's time, right? And they'll come guns a-blazing, but they'll be the first to defend you too. When another parent starts bad-mouthing you, they'll be the first to say, look, that teacher has always responded, has always shown they cared, has all right.
Yeah. They'll say they always respond to my emails or if I call them. Yep. Yeah. Cause you'll have some parents, that complain, well, I never hear from this. And they could be like, well, I email them. I always get a response back. And like, so yeah, you'd rather over communicate than under communicate.
Yeah. And they'll tell those parents like, hey, try this approach. Like they'll coach other parents on how to get a response from you.
Yep.
And that's the best piece of advice I can give is that, like you said earlier in other episodes, consistency and the ability to show that you care, those are going to go way farther than your credibility that you know how to do advanced algebra in the dark while you're sleeping, right? Like, it's going to go way farther. But sorry, I've kind of rambled on. What are your pieces of advice for those conferences?
Oh, I thought he gave them. Be consistent with your communication and.
Oh yeah, I read your mind already. Yeah.
And honesty. Yeah, and then you got me thinking about. So you're talking about like getting that stuff done and then like letting them know how you feel or whatever, and then there's that cheesy quote that you'll never know what a student knows until they know how much you care. I don't know. I think that fit into with what you're talking about. I kind of dozed
out there. I think it does. I don't know. I hate using it. I hate using that, but
it's true. But it's super cheesy. It sells coffee mugs though.
Yeah, it does. But here's what I've been learning, man, is that feelings or emotions, like I don't think that is consistent with what kids today equate to a relationship. Like, I think kids equate a good relationship more with consistency, honesty, and productivity, meaning like you do what you say you're going to do versus building that relationship, being genuine, not genuine, but being like positive. And because from my experience, a lot of kids today equate somebody's rainbows and sunshine as fake.
Yeah. Like we've said this before, is that a kid can tell if you're BSing them. So, I mean, there's no point in even doing it, right?
No, and I don't think you have to be like the 80-year-old grumpy old man who, is constantly negative and telling kids how it is. But on the same token, I do think there is good benefit or merit in saying, hey, look, like Coach Weed said last week about having that conversation with that kid about they're constantly doing things to push kids away, other, peers away, or just being annoying, and they know it, right? But they just can't break out. And I think at some point it does take someone being honest, an adult, a mentor, somebody saying, look, like, this is wrong. Like, how can we fix it? Right. But anyhow, no, conferences, they don't have to be as tricky or complicated as I know I made them out to be. And I think they're a good piece of the puzzle. Yeah, it sucks being at school until 8 or 9 at night, but I
Sometimes you
think
get a
it's
day off after that. Oh, another thing you
yeah,
could do too is that if you think you have like a difficult parent, or you ask like you said, use your resources, the other teachers. If you're
yeah,
teaching like a geometry class, ask the teacher in algebra 1, or the lower level class in there of, hey, how have you dealt with this parent? How are they at
yeah,
conferences? If you're nervous about it,
yeah.
um
Or even if someone has got a good relationship with them, just say, hey, do you mind if would you mind sitting in on a conference with me, at least for the fall one, like just this first one, so I can make sure like you introduce me, I get some credibility with that parent, right? Like, um, I think that goes a long way too. And as a quote unquote experienced teacher, or whatever you want to call whatever we were or are, I have no problem sitting in with a new teacher.
yeah,
Um,
no, I would agree with you.
yeah, absolutely, because we're in it together, right? Like it's not like the separate game. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but
All right, so let's go ahead and we'll wrap up with. So where are you at now? We talked, when was it, last Wednesday? So it's been about a
yeah,
week.
been about a week. So we were just on the move. So we went to Abilene, Texas for a night. We were in Amarillo, Texas for a night, and we've been in um where are we right now? We are in
Arlington.
Arlington, Texas, until Friday. So we are going to get up and move early. We go to Waco for 2 days, and then
Oh,
we're going to be in Austin for one day. And then we are spending like 10 days along the coast.
so, oh, okay. So along the Gulf Coast.
Yeah, we'll be in Corpus Christi for like 10 days, and then we move a little bit northeast to another island out in that area. Um, and then an island. I don't know if you want to call it an island. I don't know if there's really technically islands off of Texas, um, but yeah, then we'll be along the coast. So we'll be along the coast for about 3 weeks. We'll head into Lafayette and also over near New Orleans. Here soon, and then we'll be back in Iowa before we know it. I mean, I can't believe Christmas is what, like 6 weeks away, 7 weeks away
What's today, 26th? So
of
just under 2
October.
months. So
Yeah, it's
you're
geez
gonna go.
Louise, like we've been going since beginning of May.
Yeah. So you're gonna go see Chip and Joanna.
I don't think they'll be there.
Might have to have
Although
you.
Waco has their Silos Festival,
Oh, I might have to
so
have
they
you
may be there.
grab me something that says Magnolia on it for Morgan for Christmas, but we won't tell her.
Yeah, I'm going. We're gonna get. We got gift ideas for the ladies.
She doesn't
For
listen to this
all of our.
podcast anyway, so it doesn't matter.
No,
She
neither
won't.
has Kim. And then I think we're gonna try to run down to Meat Church tomorrow
Oh, nice.
and wax I butcher the name every time, but it's just south of us. So,
Oh,
I didn't realize they don't serve food.
at Meat Church?
Yeah,
Is it
they're
just a
just
retail
they're
space?
yeah, they sell like recipes and
Hmm,
cookware and odds and ends. So
interesting.
we'll try to run down there. But no, we went over to Goldie's, which is the number one barbecue place in Texas.
Really?
They had a freaking line around the building. We stood in line for probably 30 minutes and didn't move.
Oh, geez. Is that the one that has the she's an older lady that
No, I thought it was
is
too.
their
It's
pit
not.
master? Not
I think
not
no,
there.
no, yeah, I thought it was that as well, but it's not.
Hmm.
This place is only open on like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're only open for 3 to 4 hours a day until supplies run out,
Oh,
and
okay.
it probably only seats like 30 people.
Yeah.
But no, I thought it was that lady because I want to go there, and I can't. I need to watch Meat Church on YouTube and figure out who that is or where that is.
Yeah, I saw a thing on Netflix, and she was in. It was a barbecue show. Hey, yeah, you'll be down in Austin. You have to go check out Joe Rogan. See if he's walking
Yeah, I'm
around.
gonna see if he's there, and no, I'm excited, man. It's a good state. Just if you drive around here, you probably should look at your GPS before you go because it's insane.
Is it?
They have interstates that go. Yeah, it's nothing for you to go on a 2-lane interstate. All of a sudden, it's 6 lanes. All of a sudden, it's 1 lane, and then all of a sudden, you have two entries that merge. So the entry could come from underneath of you, and it's merging with you as you're exiting, and then you go onto a whole new interstate.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And the GPS, it screws her up. Like, she has no idea what's going on.
So, well, heck, buddy, it's been an hour and 20 minutes, so we're a little long today. That's okay. That's okay.
That's all right.
So, hey, before we go, just everybody, please make sure you, follow us, comment.
Like us, subscribe us, whatever it is.
Wait, what?
Like, subscribe,
there
leave
you go.
comments.
Like, subscribe, leave a review. You can email us at bellyuptotheblackboardpodcast@gmail.com. It's kind of long, apologize, but we just love to see, we love to see comments. We love to see reviews, anything you guys can do to show that, you've been listening to us, even if it's hate mail, we'll take anything. Any press is good press, I believe, that sounds right. Any press is good press.
Yeah, any good press is good. And then also, hey, when we're going to look for comments or when we're going to do like a semi-poll for an episode that's coming up?
Yeah, we'll have to figure out where we can create one of those. Or like, we'd love to hear comments of like ideas. Email us ideas of, what you think we should talk about or who we should talk to,
Yeah.
Maybe we can try to get on somebody.
What skill set do teachers have that would fit into the real world, like other jobs? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
send us whatever you got.
Well, and we'd like to get when we started this, we really wanted to get teachers from around the country for sure. And, heck, if we could do it around the world, just to be on here and talk about what their experience is like. So if you're a teacher listening to this, please reach out to us and, maybe we can set up an interview or something on the phone or Zoom or whatever it may be. But we'd love to have a guest from somewhere else, another state. Yep. It's belly up to the blackboard podcast @gmail.com for email. All right, buddy, I'll let you go. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I will talk to you soon.
It's good talking to you. We'll see you all later. Thanks.
All right. See you, bud.
Yeah, bye.